Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities on the Italian island of Sicily announced a major win this week, saying that after 30 years, the country's most wanted mafia boss is finally in custody. According to reports, Matteo Messina Denaro was surrounded by more than 100 members of the country's armed forces this week as he was on his way to a cafe in the city of Palermo. The arrest took place at around 10 a.m. on January 16th, shortly after Denaro stepped out of a private clinic where he was receiving cancer treatments under a fake name. Denaro is said to be the boss of the notorious Cosa Nostra Mafia, one of the most infamous organized crime syndicates ever to have existed. He is said to have been involved in almost all aspects of the organization's illegal business, overseeing racketeering, illegal waste dumping, money laundering, and drug trafficking. The mob boss reportedly went on the run in 1993 after he was implicated in a series of high-profile crimes, including the 1992 killings of anti-mafia prosecutors Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, the 1993 bomb attacks in Milan, Florence, and Rome, and the kidnapping and brutal killing of the son of a mob rival turned state's witness. Denaro once allegedly bragged that he could, quote, fill a cemetery with his victims. While Denaro was forced to keep a low profile after going into hiding, investigators say that for decades he still managed to stay involved in mob activities, giving orders to subordinates from numerous secret locations. Few photos of him existed, and he avoided technology, so police had little to go on, especially as those around him allegedly worked to keep him out of reach. Over the years, authorities say that they were able to get closer to Denaro, often by monitoring those around him. Slowly, they targeted his support systems, seizing businesses that were tied to him, and arresting his associates and family members. This reportedly left Denaro increasingly isolated, though still far from desperate. Police say that at the time of his arrest, he was wearing a watch worth 35,000 euros, and subsequent searches of hideouts belonging to him have revealed luxury perfumes, expensive furniture, and designer clothes. Given how long it took to catch Denaro, many speculated almost immediately after his arrest that police must have received some kind of tip-off. Essentially, they theorized that someone within the organization gave the old man up in exchange for something because they felt that he was no longer useful to them. Police, however, have denied that this was the case. They say that the arrest was the result of old-school investigative work mixed with a bit of modern technology. Elaborating on this, authorities claim that as part of their ongoing surveillance of people in Denaro's network, they had wiretapped the phones of those close to him. These people spoke in code and used generic terms, but continuously mentioned someone who had cancer and who was undergoing surgeries. Police concluded that this was Denaro and began to search up records for all male cancer patients born in the same year and area as the mafia boss. They slowly whittled down this list until they allegedly found one name that jumped out: Andrea Bonafede. According to reports, Andrea is the nephew of a deceased mafia boss, and when they looked up his phone records, they realized that he was nowhere near the places where he was supposed to be on multiple days where he had allegedly received cancer treatments. This led police to believe that Andrea's identity was being used as a fake name. With that, authorities zeroed in on the clinic in Palermo, where they arrested Denaro this week. While Denaro's arrest has been criticized by many for how long it took, authorities say that they still see this week's development as a major win. Not only was Denaro the country's most wanted fugitive, he is said to be the last of the original godfathers and secret keepers of the Cosa Nostra. Police therefore believe he might be the only one left with valuable information about decades-old high-profile crimes. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Authorities in western Ethiopia say that they are searching for a pair of fugitive inmates this week after they managed to escape from police custody while being transferred to prison. According to reports, the incident began sometime last week when guards were escorting a number of inmates from the western town of Alaba to a prison in the country's south. While the exact details of the situation aren't quite clear, it appears that at some point a group of the prisoners decided to make a bid for freedom. After spraying the guards in the eyes with chili powder, 4 of the men made a break for it. One was allegedly killed during the attempt, another was injured and recaptured, but 2 managed to get away. It's unclear how the inmates obtained the chili powder used in the attack, though according to local sources, the town of Alaba and the surrounding area are famous for pepper cultivation. While authorities say that thankfully none of the guards were injured as a result of the incident, they claim that the 2 escapees were involved in high-profile crimes. They are said to be dangerous, and police say that they are planning to release their names and mugshots in the coming days to aid in the search. Representatives from the Hong Kong police force say that a hot-tempered alleged gang member is in custody this week after he stupidly made a real show out of threatening a bus driver recently, only for footage of the incident to wind up getting him busted on more serious charges. The whole thing began sometime on January 6th, when the unidentified suspect allegedly cut off a minibus driver while behind the wheel of his Porsche SUV in Hong Kong's Cheung Sha Wan residential district. Despite already being the purported aggressor, the man stopped his vehicle, jumped out, and stormed up to the bus driver's window, where the 2 of them proceeded to get into a shouting match. According to reports, it wasn't long, though, before the suspect started to escalate things. He allegedly punched the bus driver multiple times, at one point knocking his glasses off of his face. Evidently deciding this still wasn't enough to settle things, though, the man then threatened the bus driver, saying that he was a triad member. In other words, he was involved in organized crime. When passengers yelled at the suspect in defense of the bus driver, saying that they would be calling the police, the suspect went back to his vehicle, pulled out some sort of large stick, and came back to the minibus. After winding up like he was going to hit the bus driver, the suspect instead lowered the weapon before finally driving away. A good portion of the terrifying encounter was not only captured by the bus driver himself, but also several of his terrified passengers, who posted their footage to social media after also notifying police. Needless to say, no one was impressed with the suspect's actions, and it wasn't long before someone was able to identify him after the footage went viral in Hong Kong. It helped that the bus driver victim, a 36-year-old man identified only by the last name of Lee, is apparently famous online for being, quote, Hong Kong's most well-educated bus driver. He reportedly holds a master's degree in transport policy and actually quit a former well-paying job he had as an engineer to found the minibus company that he still works at as a driver. On January 11th, police tracked down the suspect. While claiming to be a triad member is reportedly illegal in and of itself in Hong Kong, at the time of the man's arrest, he was also found to be in possession of nearly 4 pounds of cocaine. He was therefore slapped with drug trafficking charges on top of 1 count of criminal intimidation, claiming to be a triad member, and driving without a license. Authorities in the Australian state of New South Wales say that a 32-year-old man is in custody this week and is facing murder charges after he allegedly killed his girlfriend in her own home. According to reports, the incident began sometime after 2:30 p.m. on January 16th, when police were called to an apartment in the Sydney suburb of Penrith. The unit was home to 28-year-old Dana Isaac, and authorities had been alerted after concerned neighbors said that they had heard what sounded like a loud argument between her and an unknown man. However, when officers arrived, no one answered the door, so they left. Around this same time, Dana failed to appear to pick up her 2 young children from daycare. By 3:45 p.m., different police officers had found the young mother's burnt-out vehicle about 8 miles away from her home. It wasn't until 4:15 p.m. when someone finally went into Dana's apartment to check on her. That someone was the mother of Dana's 32-year-old boyfriend, Paul Sultana. To the woman's horror, Dana's body was inside. she had been brutally murdered. The 28-year-old's exact cause of death has not been released at the time of this recording, though it's said that she was the victim of a brutal assault and sustained serious head injuries. Following a brief investigation, attention turned to Sultana himself. It's now alleged that he was the one who had been heard arguing with Dana before police were first called, and was seen leaving the unit before they arrived. It's further believed that he moved and torched Dana's car at the location where it was found. Roughly 11 hours after Dana's body was discovered, police arrested Sultana at a residence in the suburb of Cranebrook. It reportedly took about an hour of negotiation before the 32-year-old could be taken into custody, and a heavily armed tactical operations unit apparently had to be called in. While little additional information is available about the case at the current time, it's stated that Dana and Sultana were longtime friends who had only started a romantic relationship in the past few months. The situation is still under investigation. Authorities in the English county of Hampshire say that 2 men have been sentenced this week after they, quote, idiotically broke into a zoo and distressed several of the animals there before posting footage of their crime to social media. According to reports, the incident took place nearly 2 years ago on February 15, 2021, when 24-year-old Bradley Green and 21-year-old Nathan Daniels decided to travel to the Marwell Zoo, even though it was closed to the public because of a pandemic lockdown. After arriving at the facility, prosecutors say that they cut a fence at the exterior of the property in order to gain access. Once inside the zoo, the pair of men reportedly engaged in senseless acts of vandalism that both damaged enclosures and frightened several of the animals. Police apparently later found a plastic bottle, sticks, and stones that had been thrown into the tiger enclosure, a life preserver which had been hurled into the penguin enclosure, and a plastic bottle and bucket in the giraffe enclosure. While all of the animals affected showed signs of distress after the break-in was uncovered, it appears that the giraffes got the worst of it. After breaking a door that led to their enclosure, Green reportedly threw a bottle at one of the animals, hitting it in the neck. The men not only filmed themselves doing this, but when it was later brought up in court, Green claimed he had done it to, quote, get the giraffe's attention. This same footage, along with others that Green and Daniels took and posted to Snapchat, was reportedly seen by concerned members of the public, who tipped off police. After pleading guilty to several charges related to the 2021 incident, this week Green and Daniels were each sentenced to a 12-month community order with 120 hours of unpaid work. They were also each ordered to pay £750, or about $930 US, in compensation to the Marwell Zoo. Authorities in the Ecuadorian port city of Guayaquil say that a local man is facing serious charges after he set his own truck on fire in the middle of a busy street and threatened police officers when he was pulled over for a series of traffic offenses. The incident took place sometime this week when the unidentified suspect was pulled over driving a red 1977 Datsun truck on Macala Avenue, an arterial road in the city's east. According to police, it was pretty obvious that the man was breaking the law. His vehicle was pretty much a traffic violation on wheels. Not only was the truck missing a rear license plate, the thing had apparently failed previous safety inspections and hadn't even been registered since 2014. The man also didn't have a driver's license. Though the man likely had to know that he was already facing some hefty fines as well as the confiscation of his vehicle, he had a different idea upon being pulled over. That idea can perhaps best be summed up as, if I can't have the truck, no one can. After stepping out of the vehicle, the suspect allegedly grabbed a container of gasoline and, in full view of police, started to liberally slosh it onto the truck's hood and into its interior. He then took a few steps back, struck a match, and threw it. The vehicle quickly erupted into flames. According to reports, up to and including this point, it appears that most onlookers were actually on the suspect's side. As witnesses filmed the incident, quite a few people could even be heard actively egging the man on, shouting things like, burn it," and "put it on fire." However, it turned out that the suspect wasn't done just quite yet. With his container of gasoline still in hand, he started trying to douse the officers who pulled him over, allegedly threatening to burn them alive. This is when the crowd reportedly started to turn on the man, and he was taken into custody. While it's unclear exactly what kind of penalties the suspect is now looking at, it's safe to say that they will likely be much more severe than a few traffic fines. At the time of this recording, the man reportedly remains in police custody. People across Nigeria are in mourning this week after a Catholic priest was brutally burned to death in his home during what is believed to have been a botched robbery. According to reports, the incident began sometime on January 15th, when a group of armed men stormed a parish compound that was home to Reverend Isaac Aki, as well as several other members of the local Catholic Church in the Kafin-Koro local government area of Niger State. While it's believed that the attackers initially planned to rob residents of the compound, that reportedly changed when they had trouble getting inside. Instead, they set fire to the building, trapping Aki inside. He sadly perished in the flames. Those that were lucky enough to escape the fire apparently still had to contend with the gunmen, who fired at victims as they tried to run. One of those people included another priest who lived at the compound. He was hit by a bullet in the shoulder, though managed to escape with his life. The attackers, meanwhile, also managed to get away before authorities could arrive. The allegedly slow police response to the incident in particular has become a serious point of contention in the past few days, and has even reportedly led to further tragedy. According to local media sources we came across, protests at the local police station turned violent after officers accidentally shot and killed a villager while trying to do crowd control. This led to angry residents burning down the police station. While this week's attack on Reverend Aki is certainly tragic, sadly, it is far from unprecedented in Nigeria. This is particularly true of the country's northern and central regions, where armed groups are increasingly targeting rural communities, often with impunity. At the time of this recording, the Reverend's killing has earned international condemnation, with even Pope Francis commenting on the situation. The Nigerian government, meanwhile, say that the killing will not go unpunished, though it's unclear if they currently have any leads in the case. Authorities in the Brazilian capital of Brasília say that they are on the hunt for a father and son this week after the two were allegedly responsible for ordering and participating in the heinous murders of 6 of their own family members. According to reports, the case began on January 12th, when 39-year-old Elisa Silva and her 3 young children were reported missing. The following day, a horrific discovery was made when the mother's burned-out car was found roughly 60 miles south of the city, across the state line in Goiás. Inside the vehicle were the badly charred bodies of Elisa and all 3 of the children. Authorities had barely had time to get an investigation into the chilling crime off the ground when a second burned-out vehicle was found, this time in the state of Minas Gerais. The second vehicle contained the remains of 2 more people, 52-year-old Renata Julienne Belchior and 25-year-old Gabriela Belchior. There was no doubt in police's minds that the 2 crimes were connected. Renata and Gabriela were the paternal grandmother and aunt of the children found in the first burnt-out vehicle. After several days of investigation, detectives reportedly uncovered the horrifying truth. They now say that the 2 main people responsible for the 6 terrifying killings were father and son, 54-year-old Marcos Lopes de Oliveira and 30-year-old Tiago Belchior de Oliveira. Disturbingly, Marcos was Renata's husband and Gabriela's father, while Tiago was formerly married to Elisa Mar. The 3 young victims were his 2 sons and daughter. As for what motivated the 2 men to kill 6 of their family members, police allege that it was money. Apparently, Elisa Mar had made about 400,000 Brazilian real, or about $77,000 US, from a recent property sale, and the father and son wanted it for themselves. They allegedly planned to use the money to start new lives and new families. According to reports, though Marcos and Tiago cooked up the horrific scheme together, they had help carrying out their crimes. They hired at least 3 hitmen, and police allege that Marcos' new mistress and her daughter also played a role. So far, it appears that police are still trying to work out the exact details of what happened, though what little has been released is already quite chilling. It's alleged that Elisa Mar was first intended to be carjacked and killed alone, though when Tiago and the hitmen went to carry out the plan, they found her with the children. As a result, they apparently made the decision to kill all 4 of them instead. This reportedly became a problem because Tiago and Marcos needed information from Elisa Mar in order to obtain her money that they weren't able to get when they hastily killed her. As a result, they moved on to the 2 other victims, hoping they could extract answers from them by force. This reportedly did not work either, and Gabriela and Renata were killed after they refused to cooperate. While police have now arrested the 3 alleged hitmen involved in the murders, at the time of this recording, Marcos and Tiago are still on the run. They apparently fled after the first arrests in the case were made and have not been seen since. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.